Hello, my name is Dr. Carl Candlepun, and this is the 15th official episode of my Lost podcast. As such, it features spoilers for up to and including Season 1, Episode 15, Homecoming. It features no spoilers beyond this point in the show. However, if you have not seen at least to this point in the series, I highly encourage you to do so first before proceeding with this podcast. But without further ado, let's begin. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dr. Candlepun's Lost Podcast. I am Christopher Huth, otherwise known as Dr. Candlepun.
And I am Michael Huth, also known as Paramedic Flickerson.
And today we are here to talk about episode 15 of Season 1 of Lost, Homecoming. So today I want to do something we've done a couple of times, which is actually start with our communications from the outside world section, our fan mail, if you will, because we got a comment that I think is one of the questions that I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this at the beginning of this anyways, and I think it'll lead into the other stuff pretty well. So this comment comes from Shadow Dog Production, who says, "At the end of the episode, Charlie claims that Ethan wouldn't have told them anything. Do you believe that is true? The castaways have no easy way to imprison Ethan either, which would have caused a myriad of issues. Is it possible that Charlie did everybody a favor? I say this as someone who was furious at Charlie when this episode aired." Yeah, so I thought that was great. I certainly have things to say about that. But it also, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you right away was when that happened, what was your reaction?
I assume I was mad the first time because I was mad this time. Yeah, at first I love the question, by the way. I didn't think that deep into it until you read that. But yeah, I was mad because I guess with my 20-year hiatus from the show, I allowed myself in a brief moment to believe that they were going to get some answers out of that dude. I was kind of hoping to see another waterboarding or a little torture, sharp objects under toenails, something. And so, yeah, I was mad. And then my mind started wandering like, this is why people have conspiracy theories. Like, did Charlie do this on purpose because he didn't want answers? All this stuff just ran through my head.
Do you think that it could be a thing? Like or are you using that as an example as a...
No, I immediately, that's where my mind went. Well, it went two places. The second place considerably more humorous, but my first thought was like, what is he trying to hide? Why does he not want to know the truth? And then the more humorous was, I was like, well, he did better than Bo. Boone.
Wow, it has been a while.
Yeah, he did better than Boone. Tripping with his little boy spear. Anyway, that's for later. But yeah, I was mad, and then my mind went right to that conspiracy.
Well, so when Jack comes to Charlie after the shooting happens, I don't remember if Jack actually asked him why, or if he's just... I don't remember exactly.
He said, "Why'd you do it, Charlie?"
Maybe he did.
Yeah.
Okay. Charlie gives a reason that he wasn't going to let that animal near her again. And Jack's like, he could have told us, all this stuff. And he's like, do you really think he would have told you anything? So
he also said he deserved to die.
For me, it's okay. So the flashbacks, how'd you feel about the flashbacks?
They felt very Sawyerish. Like Charlie,
he's trying to,
he's trying to scam people. So I mean, not quite the same, but at a lower level, on a druggy level, they're doing the same thing Sawyer was doing.
And he seems to abandon that plan halfway through, and then it's only when his withdrawal is getting really bad that he goes back to it.
Yes. Yeah. So, but I tell you, having another flashback of Charlie's and it involving that, it caught me off guard. Like I wasn't expecting it. Now, not to jump ahead too far, but him wanting to protect Claire so bad, and then one of the last things that Moose said to him, she told him, "You'll never protect anyone."
Mm-hmm.
Is what she said to him, and I was like, "Oh man." Not that there couldn't have been more regular reasons for him to want to protect Claire, but almost one of those things like her saying that to him, like, yeah, you'll never be good enough to protect anybody. It says a lot, about the fact that he aimed to protect her, and then how he, almost spiritually crumbled when he lost her and held himself responsible for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So that's why I brought up the flashbacks. Is it's another example of a set of flashbacks where you might be wondering, like, why the hell are we seeing this? The storyline on the island is this crazy, intense, like, oh my god, like, how are they going to resolve this? And people are getting killed. And in my opinion, Charlie doesn't even really seem like the main character of the online storyline in this episode. So why are we getting flashbacks of his, and why are they of this? And it's really, then he kills Ethan, and then you get the final flashback that's meant to contextualize it, which is that, like, so like what the dad says at the dinner about, like, oh, I gave up my band because at a certain point, I felt like I needed to do this, I need to be more practical, and that obviously resonates with Charlie, and that's what gets him to take the job. And when he's explaining to her on the doorstep, she says, I don't understand. Like, I get why you pretended to like me. I get why you did this. But why did you take the job?
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing I don't understand. He's like, I wanted you to think that I could take care of you. I wanted to be respectable. And she's like, yeah, you'll never take care of anybody. So all of that's to say that, like, what Charlie wants on the island in the present day is the same thing. He wants Claire to see him that way. And yeah, he wants to be that for her. So that, to me, that I don't take issue with what Charlie did in the sense of, like, oh, it's out of character for him, or he really fucked everybody over by doing that. Like, to me, it makes sense why he does it in that moment. He feels like he failed to protect her the first time around. They're sidelining him in this plan to catch Ethan, so he doesn't have any control over it there. So yeah, like, he takes the opportunity that he gets to put him down, and just like, okay, the threat's eliminated. I took care of it. There you go.
So if we're going back to Shadow Dog Productions question, because it's kind of multifaceted, but asking the question, and I'm paraphrasing, like could they have
Gotten information out of him.
And would they have had a place to keep him? Like, essentially, how are they going to imprison him if they take him? The other piece of that, real quick, was when those shots were fired. Spoiler alert, I didn't remember Charlie did it. So I'm thinking it's one of those classic, like, his people offed him from a distance,
Yeah,
so he didn't give information. And then they turn around as Charlie. It's like, okay, well, that's a little bit of a plot twist. But back to the point of maintaining him in custody. Number one, short of Jack winning this fight the second time, which wasn't easy by any means, but so there was that. So it's number one, just this dude's physical prowess would be hard to, you think he's not going to be looking for an opportunity to take advantage of somebody in a moment of absent-mindedness if you're trying to hold him. Number two, there's already this freakish ability for him to move around and surprise people. They've been surprised by other things in the woods and in the jungle. So the idea that, and Locke's alluded to it, they know everything about this island, like everybody who crashed on a plane are guests. So you have no idea what ability he has between noises and knocks or whatever else to alert his people where he's at, assuming there are people, which I think is a fairly safe assumption. I think we covered this.
I would agree it's a fairly safe assumption, although I don't want us to get. I want to finish what we are talking about, but something that I want to talk about tonight is that if there are other people, why is Ethan approaching Charlie alone? Why is he giving this threat alone? Why is he killing? Why is his plan, as he states it, to kill one at a time? Why aren't they just attacking? It's worth thinking about and talking about, but again, we can save that for a minute. But okay, yeah. So getting back to the comment and to what you were saying. Yeah, I mean, it is hard to think about where they could contain him. I mean, I'm thinking to Sawyer being tortured, and you timed. Although Sawyer got free of that. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah, so Sawyer actually did get free of that.
Yeah.
And so you'd have to have people guarding him, probably multiple people, because like you keep saying, like, he's clearly skilled in ways that most of them probably aren't equipped to handle like one-on-one. So yeah, it would be difficult. But okay, but I think the main point of the question though is like, do we agree? Like, do we think that Charlie did the right thing?
Did he do them all a favor?
Right.
Based on the fact that they might not be able to capture him, and do we believe he wouldn't have given up information?
Yeah.
And I would just answer both of those with a resounding yes, based off the fact of what we've already said about trying to maintain him as a captive. And then number two, there's something about his prowess, be it almost supernatural or super strong or whatever. There's nothing to suggest that he either hasn't had some training, like a resistance training to accept being tortured and being uncomfortable and not give up information, little Sears action, something. I don't know. There hasn't been any thing about him, not that we've had a lot of information about him, to suggest that they're going to torture him into giving information.
So okay, so yeah, do I think that he did them a favor? I think yeah, possibly. I could agree with that statement. Do I think that means he should have done it? And I'm not even like saying morally.
Sure.
I'm saying like strategically, just to find out. Like yeah, it doesn't seem likely that they would have been able to get any information out of this guy. But you never know.
Do something like that, and you leave everybody guessing.
Right.
Well, maybe he would have.
Yeah. So again, I think it makes perfect sense for the character to do what he did at the time that he did it. And so, from a writing standpoint, I don't take issue with that. Although it does, I do feel what a lot of audience members feel, which is that this feels like the writers weren't ready to give us those answers, so they wrote that Charlie did this. I mean, I can see why people like feel that that's the case, and I myself suspect that is the case. But I think that they did it in a way that, again, I don't take issue with it. It makes sense in the world of the story for me. It makes enough sense that he would do that for the reasons he did. But it's not the same as me like agreeing with his decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, here's another thing, and I don't know if this will change your mind or if anyone else thought about this, but after Charlie does it and they're all looking at him and the camera's pan back toward them looking at him, Claire is looking at him and she slowly looks away. That could mean two things. She's disgusted by what he did, or that deep down she's appreciative that she sees that he's willing to do anything to protect her. Those two things crossed my mind like a lightning bolt in just that short little snidbit. So for the writers not being prepared thing, maybe they were very prepared.
Oh, no, sorry.
To light up that.
Let me be clear. I don't mean that they weren't prepared. Like they didn't know the answers to the questions they would have asked Ethan. I mean, again, this is the period of the show where the writers' room is kind of caught up to the fact that, this show's wildly popular. The network's going to want us to keep this going for years.
Right.
We can't reveal all this stuff as soon as maybe we were intending to. So we have to come up with a way to keep that a mystery for a while longer. Let's have Charlie kill Ethan. So yeah, I just want to be clear that I wasn't suggesting.
Well, I didn't think you were suggesting. I thought you were just parroting what other people had said.
And yeah, maybe some of those people thought more along those lines.
Yeah.
But the sense that I've gotten from hearing other people talk about it is, well, I don't know that they've thought about it. They just feel frustrated that we were denied those answers at that point. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because that kind of goes back to previous things we've talked about, in which the show absolutely has this way of making you feel ungrateful. When they give so much information. I told you, I was, when I first watched it and I've watched it again, I'm like, whoa, we're gonna find that out now already? And then it's just like hindsight's 20/20, but you think about all the stuff there still is to learn, and the things that you could still get twisted on and never figure out. I think it just lends to that as well. It's like, oh no, you didn't get the answers all in this one episode. You might get them somewhere else. So
yeah.
But it's interesting that from your knowledge of it, from that aspect of like, that makes sense. They're catching like, oh, this isn't going to be like a one season wonder or maybe 2 seasons. Like, we better slow our roll.
Yeah.
No,
it is funny now when people get frustrated when they have access to the entire process. And I do find that a bit odd when you have like, okay, well, the show exists, you're probably going to get it eventually, and depending on the pace you're watching it, it's probably not going to be that long of a wait.
Right.
it makes a bit more sense, like back in the day, why people would be frustrated. Like you're getting these once a week at most. You don't even know if it's going to be this season that they're going to answer these things. I could get why people would get frustrated and at some point drop off the show. But yeah, anyway, the point is, like I especially agree with what you're saying. When you have the entire existing show at your fingertips and just keep watching the show, you'll find out. You were talking about Claire looking away from him. You said maybe the writers were
maybe they knew exactly what they were doing, in the sense that they wanted to, in that moment, that him killing him being the reason that it brought Claire one step closer to being back to where they were before she kind of lost her. She was taken and lost her memory.
but that in and of itself, right? That's the next thing. That also feels like, oh, we're not ready to give these answers yet, so we can't have her tell them what she went through. So she just doesn't remember. So that's why, like for our group screening, we'll be watching this episode next week, and I'm anticipating, especially based on things they've voiced already at certain points, I'm anticipating some frustration. They're like, oh my god, she doesn't remember anything.
Doesn't remember.
And oh my god, he killed Ethan, and now we can't find out from him. But going back to your point about Claire and that's funny because I don't remember noticing her look away. I very much noticed the way she's looking at him when it happens, and to me, I've always read it in the moment as like what the fuck, like whoa, dude, like geez, like we kind of just I don't know if disgust feels like too extreme a word, but just kind of put off by geez. But then at the end of the episode, she comes to him that night. She's like, I remember peanut butter. Why do I remember peanut butter? Yeah, and she's coming to him as like she's maybe grateful is too extreme a word in that direction, but like she's coming to him like almost appreciative of what he did or what he was trying to do by doing that. So yeah, to me there was always a disconnect between that look she gives him and the scene at the end in the cave. But apparently you read that look. So I mean, maybe it's just me in the way that I'm.
Well, no, I left room for that. Mm-hmm. Like she was disgusted and looking away.
Yeah.
But also, you watch somebody just smoke somebody, you're gonna have a most likely have a somewhat confused, concerned, weird look on your face anyway if you're not used to it. And then, so I guess I just allowed myself to believe that. Well, maybe it's not that though. Maybe she's not disgusted by the act. Maybe she's, impressed and feels. Okay, well, maybe he does really want to protect me. Maybe he really is who he says he is.
I'd like to think impressed is another extreme word. Like, wow, what a man.
Jungle life, baby.
But okay, so I mean, so since the amnesia thing came up, because that's the very beginning of the episode, like she wakes up in the cave, she screams, and she doesn't recognize any of them. What was your initial thought on that? Like, oh, she doesn't remember. Like, if you had any, or if
no, I know I did. I know I didn't allow myself to get too deep in it, but I'll go ahead and say it. I thought her baby was missing.
No, you said that last time, and,
yeah.
and we screened this episode, or no, we screened the last one that you and I talked about, where she shows up at the very end. We screened that last night, and people thought the same thing you thought, which was that she didn't have the baby.
She didn't have a baby.
Anymore.
Yeah, and so I was still caught up in that for a second, like they're like, "Oh, you're fine," and I think she even maybe had her hands around her stomach, and then it wasn't until Charlie or somebody said, "The baby's fine," and I was like, "The baby? I thought the baby's gone." Yeah. And then so getting back to her being confused, I thought she would have that kind of that initial response, then she'd get her wits about her and be like, "Oh, I'm not with my captors anymore. I'm back with you guys. How did that happen? What happened?" Clearly that wasn't in the script.
So once you accepted that what she was actually saying was that she didn't remember them, like she didn't remember anything after the crash,
my mind just went to the psychological overwhelming nature of having been taken. Maybe she did watch him string Charlie up, and she's blocking that out. I also thought if they had any narcotics in her to keep her woozy, or to keep her talking, or just to keep her unconscious altogether, like all of those things. Again, you probably know this. Even if you go under anesthesia for surgical procedures, I'll stop short of saying studies because I haven't read the studies. The suggestion is that you do lose memory. That not just of the fact that you were out while you're having surgery, but you can lose some capacity in the brain in general. And so I just took all that into consideration of I let my mind go there rather than getting too deep into it's too convenient that she doesn't remember anybody right now type thing.
Right. Well, so the reason I was kind of asking is because, like, I feel like there's a tantalizing possibility that they kind of hint at for a minute before something happens that kind of
whisks that away.
Yeah. And so Boone's like talking to Locke the night that she comes back, and they're outside the cave, and he's like, and she's out there for this amount of time with this guy, and she doesn't remember anything. And Locke's like, apparently. And the next day, Saeed's saying, like, we don't know anything about Ethan, how long he's been here, all this stuff. And he's like, how do we know that Ethan didn't send her back?
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if either, or if, like, when they were saying those things, like, did you kind of wonder if, like, somehow she'd been brainwashed and sent back or something? Or was she lying about her amnesia for some reason? Did those thoughts go through your head at all?
Well, when Boone speaks, no thoughts go through my head. Well, I'm still waiting for the episode where Boone does something right.
I knew you'd love it. I knew you'd love it.
Dude stumbling with his spear.
Well,
the best thing Boone could have done was falling on that thing.
I felt like your favorite part of this episode would have to have been when he volunteers for the shift, and Saeed like looks at it and Locke's like, "Sure, Boone, we're all counting on you." And Boone even kind of like, what did that mean? Why did he say it like that?
No one would say that to me. Yeah. So yeah, Boone didn't cause me any suspicion at all.
But I mean, like, it's mostly what Locke said in response to what Boone was saying.
Locke and Saeed, I making fun of Boone, of course, but I didn't put much stock into their suspicious minds either, because it fits right into both their characters, although they have two vastly different reasons for being skeptics. It fits. It's almost like there's a part in the episode where Locke is giving his thoughts on why they shouldn't do what Jack wants to do. And it made so much sense that at some point, I'm sorry, at some point it makes so much sense, or Jack's like, okay, Locke,
you clearly have a
yeah. And so I guess I'd be surprised if Locke didn't think that, and I would be very surprised if Saeed didn't think that. And then when you look at all the other evidence you have about Ethan, the glaring question is, how would she get away from that dude? Like we'd have a hard time getting away from that dude.
I was asking that because there's this fun little 3-minute period, maybe 5-minute period where it's like, oh, like, should we be suspicious of Claire? Like, should we be viewing her as a threat? And then by the end of Act 1, like, that's immediately taken away. And I'm not saying they should have dragged that out necessarily, but when Ethan shows up, knocks out Jen, and delivers that threat to Charlie, it becomes clear in that moment that, like, he did not intend for Claire to get away. So then by then you kind of have to accept that, okay, no, she really does have amnesia. But yeah, and that was going to be my next question, which you kind of already threw out there, was like, okay, well, in that case, how did she get away? And yeah, obviously we don't get the answer to that.
Yeah, Ethan must, stay up really, really late and then suffer narcoleptic like naps, I guess.
Well, the scratches seem to suggest.
Yeah, I forgot all about the scratches. Yes. They do seem to suggest that she might have fought Ethan and scratched him, and that's how she got away, which flies in the face of the numerous punches, headbutts, elbows, and knees that he took in the fight before he succumbed to the fight.
But, okay, the thing to keep in mind, I will say that those scratches are very little context of how she would have gotten away. I feel like you're imagining she just scratched him and then got away because he was in pain.
No,
there could have been a lot more to it.
I'm alluding to that for humor's sake, but no, I don't believe that.
Okay.
I don't believe that at all.
Well, and so, and that kind of, the question I alluded to earlier about, there's so much that seems to suggest that it's not just Ethan that's out there and that wanted Claire and that's been doing these things. I mean, there's so many clues that suggest that he's part of a group of people. So why, and this is obviously this would be you speculating that's what I'm looking for. Why does he attack Charlie alone, give his threat alone? Why is he the one that when they leave Claire as bait? Why is he the only one that shows up to retrieve her? Any wild theories?
Well, I mean, first off, there's no indication that just because he's all we saw that that's the case. His band of angry manhandlers could have been in the weeds, and again, clearly he can handle himself, and maybe.
But when he gets at gunpoint, why not come out then? Maybe.
You're saying that at the final part where he comes to get her because they've laid this trap,
right?
Yeah, my mind went a little wild, man. I was thinking like flap traps in the ground. I couldn't remember how this scene was going to end, and so the sad reality is it could have been a little psyops on their part. Like, yeah, we're going to send him out there. We'll watch. If they take him, sweet. Then we've got one on the inside. When it comes time, we'll get Claire back in. We'll get our guy back. Might get some intel in the meantime. And then they were probably like crapping their knickers when they realized that Charlie was going to off him.
Well,
or realize he did off him, I guess.
Well, and while you're saying that, it occurs to me that like maybe they were, and I mean, however far back they're watching from a distance, if we assume that they were, who's to say they weren't about to swoop in?
Yeah.
And then Charlie fucking does what he does, and they're like, oh, okay, never mind. Although, I mean, Claire still being there, Ethan being dead wouldn't negate that. Like, if they all wanted Claire back as much as Ethan seemed to,
there could have been some displeasure with Ethan too, and they just assumed that would happen.
Why do you imagine there would be displeasure with him?
Well, I mean, I can imagine a lot of scenarios in which that would be. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's the outcast for them. Maybe he believes they should be doing something different than what they're doing on the island or with these particular survivors from the plane crash. Maybe they're mad because she got away and they entrusted him, and this is the baby they need for whatever.
Well, the most obvious potential answer that I think you can point to from where we're at is, well, he clearly lost her. She clearly got away from him, and he's really upset about it. And yeah, maybe the rest of the people are too, but they blame him, and they're like, hey.
And maybe it's one of those things like they don't even know that she got away, and he just went back, and that's why he made that threat, and that's why he's by himself, because he's going to make it right, and he's putting that warning on him that
that's a good
kill
point.
One a day until I get her back, because I was due back at the house a few hours ago.
That's a great point too. It's like, yeah, I don't want my people to find out that I lost her. Although, going back and forth again, the problem with that is his threat to Charlie implies that like he'll be patient. Like, if we're gonna take 40 days for you to give her back to me, and I have to kill people one by one. Although, who's to say that he meant that? Like, maybe
it's probably a bluff, threat. Like, like he's like, I'll only have to kill one.
Well, right.
Or I'll either get her back, or I'll only have to kill one.
Or because it's only me, I'm only able to kill one at a time. Yeah. So I'm gonna pretend that this is the reason that I'm doing it super intentionally. When Ethan does kill the one person that he kills, they say that they had all the perimeters set, and yet he got around it, and Kate says that Locke says that Ethan came from the water.
Yeah. I looked at the scene, the backdrop, the rocks on the beach and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, could he have? Well, sure. And I'm going partly off memory and not the scene, but the beach is fairly long, right?
Yeah.
So are we to believe that in pretty angry surf, that Ethan, was snorkeling his way over there or had a reed in his mouth like an old Scooby-Doo flick? I mean, it's not, unless he was coming from a submersible or something like that, and he just, swam straight up and straight in type thing. I'd like to think somebody would have seen some commotion in the water. It would have been a little bit harder to, I mean, the rocks are obviously placed in a really sweet spot, especially if the person he killed happened to walk by the rocks and he pulled him over him. Clearly he's strong enough. Choked him out, snapped his neck. Well, but he also took his time with him, and I'm going to argue he must have snapped his neck first because she suggests he also broke all of his fingers.
Yeah.
He clearly wasn't torturing him for information, and somebody most likely would have heard that. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. Well, and of course that's the other thing too. Sorry, not to not to expand too much, but for someone who didn't know any better, they would find the ocean being to their back a safety net.
Right.
I mean, that, yeah.
Well, it sounds like it seems like it was weird to you, and like you wouldn't mind there being some further explanation for how he could have done that.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't bother me. I mean, I'll have to set an alarm to lose any sleep if they don't tell me. But after all, it was just Steve.
Okay, well, so another thing that happened in this episode is the case of guns came into play. Well, so the thing that I found perhaps the most interesting regarding Jack handing out the guns is that he gives one to Sawyer. It makes sense that, okay, like, you're looking for people that know how to handle a gun. Your options are probably pretty limited. It's safe to assume, especially if he knows about him shooting a polar bear, that Sawyer knows how to fire a gun. But what I took note of is that he gives Sawyer a gun before he gives Kate a gun.
Well, he never gave Kate a gun.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
What I mean is,
yeah,
he's got one gun. He himself
Yes.
has one gun left to give, and instead of giving it to Kate, he gives it to Sawyer. Any thoughts on that?
I've got a theory. I felt the same way. I felt like he was being a little pouty, maybe like a little junior highish, little sophomore-ish.
Okay.
On his little spat with Kate. But then I got deeper into it, and what I settled on pretty quick was the fact that he knows that if things get thick, Sawyer nobody's going to take that gun from Sawyer. Sawyer's not going to refrain from pulling that trigger.
Okay.
He probably knows that about Sawyer more than he knows that about anybody he gave a gun to. Second place would be, even more than himself. Locke would be in there. Sure, he wants to believe that Locke would have no problem doing it, but he knows Sawyer would have no problem doing it.
And he probably feels that way about Sayid too. But both of whom he's already given guns to. So
Right.
so yeah, it's kind of
in this case. That I feel like it probably had more to do with, hey, I'm putting the guns in the hands of somebody who will go out firing. They're not gonna lose the weapon. They're not gonna fail to pull the trigger if it's trigger pull in time.
Because Jack didn't lose the weapon.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's interesting. You gave that because I that's one I didn't think of for why he would give it to Sawyer before Kate. The two that I was kind of bouncing between, and I think according to my interpretation of it, I think both of these are kind of true, but the two big ones that I was caught between was either he doesn't want to put Kate in danger because of his feelings for her, so he doesn't want her to be there, or, and the more interesting one, I think, because you remember, like, these past few episodes, like, he's been getting really frustrated with Kate not trusting him the way that he was trusting her, in spite of her being a fugitive, and so I think that I wonder if, like, because she's a fugitive and he's one of the few people that knows that, that's why he's not willing to give her a gun in that moment.
I think it could be. I think it's still fall under my argument for pettiness. and on the other side, I think it'd be naive of Jack to be worried about her safety when he hasn't had a stitch of evidence. The only person on that island that's more capable than Ethan of potentially manhandling her is Sawyer, and she got loose from his little mount.
But I feel like that could be used as a counterpoint to what you were saying, though, too. Like, he has no reason to think that she would be hesitant to pull the trigger.
Well, no, because I don't think he feels that way. Because I think she'd fight, but I don't think, and maybe it's just a sexist thing, but I think, like, now I'm imagining a point in which she could have pulled the trigger and didn't.
I know you didn't mean it literally, but you're talking about, like, him wanting people that were going to go out there shooting, or ready to shoot, however you said it. They're wanting to catch him alive, so ideally they're not wanting to fire him.
No, I didn't mean on Ethan. I meant if things get out of hand. Like, they're going for Ethan. Yes, they want to capture, not kill, but knowing that if things went south, if there's more than just Ethan, if somebody's losing the upper hand, yeah, it just the idea. Like, it's a capture mission, kills always on the table type thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and to be clear, I'm not saying that Jack thinks she can't handle herself. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is he cares a lot less if something goes wrong and Sawyer gets killed than if something goes wrong and Kate's getting
yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
sure.
that he's saying that Sawyer's more capable than Kate necessarily.
Just more expendable.
Right.
Yeah.
In his mind. Yeah.
In my mind is not.
Well, but then, and I don't know if I'm projecting this on this a little bit, but yeah, I feel like we talked in the episode about the briefcase about how it seems to me that maybe Sawyer's starting to suspect that Kate might be the fugitive because, when he kind of calls her out, like, oh, that's not your case, is it? Like after they first get it out, like, oh, so you wouldn't mind if I take it then? She's like, knock yourself out. But he can tell it's bothering her. And then of course she starts trying to get it back. There's not a lot of explanations for why she'd be trying to get a case that's not hers.
Especially one so robust.
I think it seems to me that by this point Sawyer might be suspecting Kate of being the fugitive, and to me, again, maybe I'm projecting this because of that, but to me, when he's offering Kate the gun and he's like staring Jack down, it's almost like he's trying to call Jack's bluff, like do you want to tell me why I shouldn't be giving her a gun? Jack's kind of like, whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Get on my girlfriend again.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to circle back to Charlie's arc, and him trying to take care of Claire. Like he wants to be that. Like that's what he wants to be. And so because of that, he doesn't tell her initially that Ethan has made this threat and they're dealing with the situation, and now somebody's been killed because of it. And everybody's it's because everybody's acting weird with Claire that Claire gets it out of Shannon, and she's mad at Charlie for not telling her. Basically, what I'm wondering is, do you think Charlie was right to not tell her, or can you see why he wouldn't?
I mean, the whole idea of her being upset about it, I don't know, kind of escapes me. Like, what knowledge what does the knowledge of it do for you? Like, you've already been taken by these people. They've affected your memory. Like, could you have any more heightened awareness if they, you know what I mean? It'd be like me coming back from captivity and my captors are still, in this neighborhood. They haven't found him yet. And me letting my guard down and be like, oh, you should have told me that they found him two blocks away, or found one of them 2 blocks away, or their cigarette pack or whatever. It's like, well, I can't be any more on guard. I've already experienced the worst of it, so to speak. And so the idea that, like, I guess there'd be some value in telling her if there's some indication that she's like, I'm not going to cost anybody their safety. I'll go back to Ethan. Well, that's not going to happen. So then what did you knowing have to do with anything?
Well, it ends up, I don't disagree with the point you're making, but because she knows, she does willingly volunteer to be the bait, or agree to be the bait. I mean, granted, if that was the plan they were going to go with, they would have had to have asked her.
Not really. she could have been the unwilling bait.
Yeah,
sure.
That's fair.
Everybody could have just been, walking the flanks, and Charlie's like, hey, let's go for a walk. And then he goes her hard to the right, and she's like, Charlie?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, hell, that must have been what Ethan thought. Like, if Ethan didn't.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go there. But.
If Ethan didn't realize it was a trap, and maybe he did, if he didn't realize it was a trap, he must have thought that they let her out there without her knowing why.
Which doesn't seem very, I've been living in the jungle savvy.
Well,
for him to think.
We're gonna get to that in the next. We have we have the return of one of our semi-recurring segments. Unfortunately, deleted scenes. I'll just go ahead and get into it. So yeah, unfortunately deleted scene. This one doesn't exist on the DVDs or Blu-rays for whatever reason. There were promotional photos from this scene. They were released at some point. But the actor that plays Ethan talked in an interview about this scene in what happened in it. And essentially what happened was Ethan first breaks through because it seems weird, right? In the context of the episode as it exists, the plan as they've established it is that they're surrounded and they're on the lookout for him. So how does he get past all of them and suddenly he's at her before any of them get to him? The way that it was written and filmed, but it was deleted apparently for time. Again, it's one of the things that sucks about it being constrained to, okay, it can only be this minutes long. like a lot of those network TV shows are, and certainly were back then. They had to cut this. They had to get this part out. But basically, he broke through the perimeter at Locke's point. He either ambushed Locke or Locke caught him coming through. They get into it. Locke manages to cut his outer thigh, and then Ethan knocks Locke out. And then where he's coming from was Locke's position, and you can actually see that he's limping when he's coming after Claire. So he's wounded, and that's also kind of explains why Jack's able to best him. Which even then, Jack's having a difficult time at first. But yeah, that's what the actor was saying. Was like, it kind of explained why this time he's able to win. Jack is. So again, that's unfortunately deleted scene.
Yeah,
sucks it wasn't in the episode. It would have helped, I think. I did have just one small little tiny thing that we didn't get to in my notes, so I'll just bring it up now. Nothing profound, but when Claire wakes up and everybody's like talking to her, Sun and Jin are off in the corner, and Jin is asking Sun like if she thinks that Claire's okay, and like what about the baby? And there's kind of that moment. Did you have any thoughts on that? I know I keep asking that very vague.
Yeah, no, my only thought, because again, I almost forgot that they were even in this episode, but I wouldn't have, if you would have not brought it up, I would have not even recalled they were in it. But if I'm thinking about that particular moment, my thoughts were Jin maybe regretting that they do not have children, or thinking, how valuable that child, actually is, not as a resource there on the island, but just the idea of like, man, we missed our shot. We don't know what that is, and we may never know, even though they most likely still have the capability to get pregnant. Probably wouldn't be the wisest of choices on this island at this point in the juncture, but that's what I took from it. Almost like man, I was so busy, doing life, I didn't live it the way that we could have, or maybe I could have brought her more joy, or
maybe just
or maybe he just wants Claire's baby,
or maybe he just, the idea of having a child, whether or not it's come up in the past in their relationship, it's just something. I don't know. It definitely felt like even her reaction to him showing concern over that, like there seemed to be some kind of weight there.
Yeah.
Also related to that, I wanted to follow up on a couple episodes back. You're talking about how you have a theory that Jin secretly speaks English too.
Yeah.
Do you still have that?
There's a part of me that still does, just because, and I assume you're alluding to the fact, like, well, why wouldn't he have just spoke English? No, never mind, because he still doesn't know that his wife speaks English. He's just such a strategist in keeping them separate from them. It's like if he lets them know he speaks English, then he has to have more conversation. If he has to have more conversation, be it intentional or unintentional, he's most likely to give out more information, which clearly he doesn't like to do. Doesn't want to trust anybody, that type of thing. So I think it still could be that he speaks English and he's just keeping it tight.
That's fair. But the reason that I thought this possibly could have changed your mind, that scene could have possibly changed your mind, would he have needed to ask Sun's opinion or her assessment of it if he could?
Oh, if he could overhear everyone. Well, needs probably not the right word, but he might have wanted her opinion versus just trusting what he was hearing everybody else say. Right. And
to go along with that, it's been well established that he doesn't know that she speaks English.
Yeah.
So if she can only understand what he understands, what's the point of that? Like, what's the point of asking her anyways?
Yeah, maybe it's that.
So him speaking English wouldn't make it any less weird that he's asking her what she thinks. You know what I'm saying?
Trying to wrap my mind around that. But
what I'm saying is, you have the two scenarios. Either he speaks English or he doesn't. Either way, he doesn't know that Sun speaks English. So if he's asking because he doesn't know what everybody's saying,
why is he asking? She would know.
Yeah, why is he assuming she would know? And the same would be applied if he does speak English. Whatever reason he has for asking her opinion, it's not that he thinks that she understands better than he does the language. Regardless, my point is, I wanted to bring that up as a potential counterpoint to him secretly speaking
Yeah.
English, but then kind of go into, well, there would be a way around that too, really,
Yeah.
because it doesn't. The fact that he's looking for reassurance from Sun that, okay, as a woman or whatever, I think she's okay. I think she'll be fine. The fact that he doesn't know she speaks English means that it doesn't have to be because he doesn't speak English that he's asking.
Yeah.
You can't find the succinct way to say that.
Yeah.
Every time I make that way more convoluted. Well, so all in all, did you like this episode?
I did like this episode. I did. I, again, wasn't prepared for the extra flashbacks of Charlie, but I thought they fit in nice to the overall episode and potentially, as we discussed, explaining some things. I liked the action or the suspense leading up to the action. It was definitely a keep your attention episode.
Yeah.
And I wasn't bothered by any questions that weren't answered or any things that didn't come to conclusion. Kind of back to your point, it's like, spoiler alert, A, I've seen it. B, if I hadn't seen it, I could go get every episode right now and watch it to my heart's content. So
yeah. Although, I mean,
that would ruin what we're doing.
Well, no, that was going to be my point. Was just like knowing that we're watching it at essentially the pace that it aired. That doesn't bring any not frustration. I wouldn't expect you to be frustrated about it, but just like oh man, like got to keep waiting, and it's probably going to be a while.
Oddly enough, I don't know how this could be true, but I believe it's 100% fact that I am busier now than I ever was when I was in the middle of my career watching that. So, well, I mean, again, that doesn't matter that I'm retired, running a business, and have another full-time career. But arguably, it's the kids. I mean, it's having the kids on top of that and the season of their lives that they're in. It just makes for so busy that it feels more like a treat now than an addiction that it probably was 20 years ago, where I'm just like wishing the rest of the week away because you're 20 something and dumb, just just wish every day is Wednesday or whatever day it aired on. So I definitely I don't need that. It does feel more like a treat now than it probably did back then.
Yeah. So you don't have like the time to be like, well, I guess kind of what I'm saying though is like what you're saying makes sense for like, obviously you're not spending the rest of your week like thinking about the show because you got way too much going on. But I didn't know if in the moment where you're denied those answers, you're like, oh, well, I don't get those now. Who knows when I'll get them? If in that moment you feel like any kind of like,
I mean, I don't.
That's good. That's great.
I think the other part of that is like it's the Forrest Gump effect, right? Where like first time I watched Forrest Gump and they get so into it and he's doing all these things and attaching all these things from history to him. There reaches a point in Forrest Gump where just like don't end this, like keep this going. You keep this going all the way up to today, And I think with certain episodes. Certain shows, and this show could definitely be one of those if it was brand new and you were having to wait. I'm sure that feeling felt the same. You don't want it to end, but now I have the knowledge that I'm not in any kind of hurry because there's all these seasons to answer these questions versus me back in the day wondering how many seasons there would be. I mean, you think about back then, how many shows you really got into, and then you're like, oh, can't wait for season 2, and then it's like season 2 never comes, and they talk about it's like, we're thinking about season 2, and then season 2 is still not here, and I'm halfway dead. So it's very, very different in that sense, I think.
Well, cool. I will say for me, it's an interesting episode because I really like the On Island story. I can empathize with other people's frustration regarding the amnesia and regarding Ethan being killed off before any kind of information could be get. I empathize with those things, but because I've seen the show and I know those answers and I like the way that it's paced, they don't bother me. I don't love the flashbacks. I get why they're relevant, and I like the way they contextualize what Charlie did. So I like the ultimate thing that they accomplished, but I don't know that I needed a whole
Yeah.
thing of him doing this because it doesn't. It's kind of like the Kate robbing the bank thing. It doesn't give us a whole lot more information about Charlie. It gives us more than Kate's did.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
Yeah.
But because it does establish Charlie wants to be seen this way. He wants to be somebody that can take care of the people he loves. We didn't necessarily have that before. We learned about his previous faith and trying to avoid temptation and his love for music that kind of got corrupted and how the band became his identity and how he felt abandoned by his brother, all that stuff. Now we kind of got a new piece, but I just don't know the amount of time spent on it was worth it. And tonally, again, I get why they're there. I get how they contextualize what he does on the island. But the tone of the flashbacks versus the tone of what's happening on the island feels very different.
Yeah.
Like one is like super intense and like and the other one's just like okay. And there, I mean, and even there's the sequence where he throws up in the copier. That's almost played for comedic effect. The music that they're playing, like it's meant to be funny.
Yeah.
In a way that, like, first of all, that situation maybe like that storyline of the flashback and what he's going through isn't necessarily meant to be funny. So it feels weird in that way. But also, it's like it's literally wedged between, okay, we're gonna use Claire as bait and we're gonna try and catch this guy who's murdering people. It's just a little weird for me. Interesting fact, Damon Lindelof, who's one of the creators and the showrunners for the whole run of the show, the one who I credit the most for the show being what it is, he says this is his least favorite episode of the entire series. I've talked by myself. Maybe I've talked about it with you. I don't love like ranking episodes because I feel like it fluctuates a lot. So I don't know that I would point to one episode of the show and say that's my least favorite. I really don't think I have one. Like I have certain ones that I'm like, I don't love those ones. Anyways, my point is, I don't necessarily see the episode as poorly as Damon Lindelof himself sees it. But yeah, for me, the thing that makes this one a little bit weaker is the flashbacks not gelling.
Yeah, not gelling as well.
Yeah. Okay, and before I forget, because we did do our fan mail thing at the beginning, I just want to reiterate that if you guys would like to talk to us, respond to us, communicate with us in any kind of way, you can leave a comment on this video if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to the audio-only version, you can email us at dr.candlepun@gmail.com. And you can send in emails that are just written, or you can send in an audio message or a video message, and we will feature that on the podcast. But yeah, any thoughts about things that we've said or things that we didn't say, and you're like, hey, why the hell didn't you talk about this, or why didn't you notice this? Feel free to point that stuff out, because we're just two people, and every time I watch the show with somebody new or talk about the show with somebody new, people are pointing out things that I somehow still, after all these times, never caught. Point is, we want to interact with more Lost fans and get more perspectives than just ours. So we'd love to hear from you. And that's all we've got for this week. We will be back next week for episode 16, Outlaws.
Hope to see you then.
I would now like to give a special thank you to the currently active donors. These include candidate number 90, Ben Ward, candidate number 108, Jeffrey Winslow, candidate number 69, Brian Phillips, candidate number 32, Chuck Boyd, and candidate number 341, Hans. If you too would like to become a candidate, you can do so for as little as $1. One-time or recurring donations can be set up on Ko-fi.com/Candlepun or Patreon.com/Candlepun. A donation of any amount will get you credited in this podcast and added to the candidate wall, which will be displayed in all video versions of the episodes of this podcast from that point forward, even once you're no longer donating. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the multiple people that have donated equipment and resources that are used in the production of this podcast. These include Mary Mullins, Brandon Huth, Charles Huth, William McMahon, and Charlene McMinn. Until next time, namaste and good luck. Hello. To like this video, click the thumbs up. Or, if there has been an incursion by the hostiles, click the thumbs down. To leave feedback, enter a comment below. To be notified when more videos arrive, click the circle and then select the notification bell. To view previous content from this channel, click either of the two boxes.